All right, we're going to call to order the Wednesday, August 5th regular board meeting for Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. Can I have an approval of the agenda? A motion to approve the agenda.
I will motion that the agenda be approved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and abstaining. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items are to be approved with one motion unless removed from the consent agenda for discussion. As always, we'll hold discussion after the vote. Are there any items that any board members want to hold for discussion?
If I could just jump in here quick with a proposed note. On the minutes from the special board meeting, I just noticed a little typo on item 3 for implementation table.
Let's pull up here. Yep. Thanks, Tori.
Yep.
Or I guess if there was one that we weren't going to pass with consent, was there one that you wanted to discuss further with a separate vote? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
On favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And so with that, we can have discussion on any of the items. If anyone has any?
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss DEI and both of the regulatory programs. I noticed that the senior housing is a new construction, and the second, the Conway Family Center, is a demolish and new construction. So given that opportunity, I was just wondering, are we in the process right now of being able to talk about the low salt winter design?
Yeah, we certainly could have passed along comments related to low salt design more recently through the Sunrise Park project that was requested at that time, but it's not incorporated in the rule yet. But I could certainly pass that on, similar to what I did for that project, and we did get a response. Okay, so yeah, I can do that for both.
Thanks.
Anything else before we move to the stewardship grant program? Nice, the stewardship grant program.
Actually, visitor comments.
Visitor comments, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, do we have any visitors on Michael Miller or Nikki Schwepp is for one of the permits?
Yeah, Michael Miller, would you like to speak for visitor comments today?
All right, nothing from Michael, so we'll move on. Regulatory programs, we'll start with 5A1, the Heights Public Amenities Outlets.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. You are all very familiar with the Heights Common Plan of Development. Tonight we have Nikki Schlepp from LHB here as a representative for that permit request. But I can just go through the proposal. For a little background, two of you, I believe, were at the December 2023 meeting where LHB and the Port Authority presented a vision for the public outlots, which would include ways to access both historic and constructed wetland areas via trails, sidewalks, boardwalks, gathering spaces, and play areas. So they, have been working throughout these last few years and are ready to bring that proposal for approval tonight. And then also for a little context, the first phase of the Heights was a mass grading phase, and that the board approved in 2023 as well, with the established buffer widths that this permit request is now referencing. Just wanted to point that out. Much of the proposed impervious area is going to be considered disconnected. But they are tying into the sort of more regional stormwater management plan or the rather small amount of impervious that's not considered disconnected via the criteria in our rules. But the biggest piece to this permit request obviously is a lot of activity and amenities within wetland buffer areas. And another reminder that most of these, actually all of these buffer areas have already been disturbed with soil remediation as well. So it's a little bit unique in that they, you know, all these areas were already pretty much disturbed and have been under construction for the last 2 years, 3 years. You know, the purpose of the project, as stated by the applicant, is to bring the public to the wetland areas. So, you know, looking back at the board meeting minutes and the notes that I took from the 2023 meeting in December, this is very consistent with the feedback received, but also the vision that was presented at that time. There was nothing in this submittal, granted 3 years later, that was a surprise to staff. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of comments and one kind of small question. First, a comment to just acknowledge, I saw in the introductory material that it's intended that all of the landscape and public realm elements is one construction package, and I want to say I appreciate that. But the complexity of this project, having it come back multiple times with different sort of components, and yes, there is a larger vision, but it's often kind of hard to sort that out. We're not sure when something might, so hitting it all at one time, I think provides a greater continuity with hopefully you know, a single contractor or maybe some subs. So I like that. So thank you. And then also in the design documents, they're for the public amenities. There's mention of some of the intended plant communities are going to try to represent or replicate kind of a prairie oak savanna type community, which was common throughout this part of the world back in the day, probably a few decades ago or longer. And so I personally, I value that, but I am curious if there is a plan for kind of some of the maintenance, because it's also mentioned it's going to be a lot of kind of what's the word, salvaged wood products, timbers and so forth, in some of the climbing walls or play equipment and so forth. So with that idea of prairie savannas, oftentimes fire is an important aspect, and is the ability to burn these admittedly small areas something that is being thought of at this point, and whether or not those wood products, salvaged or otherwise, might be a kind of a challenge to work around. So whoever can respond to that.
Yeah, I can start, and then I might have Nikki step in as well. There's going to be quite a matrix of O&M between the Port Authority and their responsibilities, and then the City of St. Paul. They'll be owning a lot of the storm infrastructure, and so they are still kind of hashing out the limits and the bounds of, like, this is exactly what we're maintaining versus the port. So we'll be keeping up with those O&M discussions. I know for these broader buffer areas, we had discussed fire. We've been talking about O&M for a couple of years now. So it was a while ago. Admittedly, I don't know. There was an approved buffer maintenance plan with the 2023 permit approval. And that was prior to this design being finalized. So I'm wondering, Nikki, if you know what the current O&M discussions are, or if you're aware of that buffer agreement with the city of St. Paul, and whether or not that might be amended to incorporate these elements.
Yeah, this is Nikki Schlepp, Senior Landscape Architect with LHB. I am not aware of the current status. I just know that of the buffer maintenance plan. I do know that, as you said, Nicole, this larger ongoing maintenance effort between the Port Authority and the city is still under, in the works, under negotiation. But in general, these these outlot parcels in particular and the amenities within would primarily fall under the Port Authority's maintenance responsibility is my understanding. And with that, they were hoping, as we said, with it being bid all at the same time, having one contractor, and then hopefully entering then a maintenance contractor agreement with that contractor, so we can see this landscape established over that kind of critical 3 year to 5 year time frame. Um, but the specifics of how fire is in there, that I cannot answer right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear, Nicole, that it's at least been mentioned in some of the planning and development documents. So I just wanted to bring it up, and I wasn't expecting to have a, kind of a final answer.
Yeah, maybe when on or around when the first seating takes place, and certainly before we close this permit, we could require, or even ahead of time. I think it might come down to whoever, like Nikki said, whoever the contractor is and has some expertise in the plantings that are being specified, but we could require a maintenance plan so that we're all kind of on the same page when and if that gets handed over from the contractor back to the port. That's probably a good idea.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's certainly great. My last comment is really more of a question. Recognizing the extent of the mass grading that occurred and factored in these public amenity, these outlots, there is a lot of planting of native, kind of already briefly touched on, native plants. And so I saw in one of the figures, just kind of generically, topsoil. And I'm wanting to just make sure, I'm sure probably the case, but want to make sure that adequate, good topsoil is going to be provided for appropriate seeding response, and also how that topsoil, where it might originate from. I don't think you particularly bring in invasive seeds. What kind of provisions thought of from a landscaping aspect? So someone could speak briefly to that. Kind of small thing, but important.
Yeah, I can certainly have that comment when I do the follow-up with the project team. I also want to, I didn't do it before this meeting, but take a look at there's a WACA replacement mitigation plan for the mitigation areas, so outlots A and B, that have performance standards for vegetation as well, and perhaps specified topsoil that was approved by the city of St. Paul. But yeah, do you know offhand, Nikki, other than the spec topsoil, like what's being planned for the import of that material? And otherwise I can follow up with the port after this meeting to get more information on that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. The earthwork contract is separate, and so a lot of that might have already occurred. And so with our work, if anything, we would just make sure things are decompacted, and amended if needed.
Yeah, I expect, we've already talked about how we're gonna need to like try to figure out during inspection whose responsibility is whose as far as vegetation establishment, because we have a different contractor that already did the mass grading and the initial seeding. We have, I believe, a different contractor doing maintenance and monitoring for the replacement plan through WACA, and then there might be some disturbance, additional plugs and overseeding, interseeding with this. It's gonna get interesting, but yeah, we'll have to
It's been a
figure all that out.
complex project that's
Yes.
evolved over time.
Yes, there's a pattern.
Yeah, all recognize. And just before I close here on the soil, not just seeds, but other invasive species, jumping worms being one of them. They seem to be moving quite quickly around the metro area, and you don't need to bring it any further if at all possible.
From you, Stephanie? Yeah, I didn't have anything to add. It was very similar to what we saw before, so I was happy with it. So let's see, there's the motion. A motion to approve the Heights Public Amenities at lots F, A, and B.
I will motion that we approve the Heights project.
I will second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstaining? The application is approved. So we had someone come in. We are past visitor comments, but if you're here for a permit, or are you here to visit? And just,
I guess that's an information on it.
yeah, we can take a step back and give you 4 minutes to make some comment.
I got 4 minutes.
Yeah,
I was here,
we won't cut you out right at 4, but we just ask it to be.
I was here about a year ago.
Can you, yeah, just introduce yourself.
Oh,
too.
Rocky Way from Little Canada. I live across the street from Savage Lake. And I asked at that time if I could get a group of you members to look at what I've got, because this is the file. Right now, my printer's not working, but I will send these around. This is what the lake looked like in 1957. And if you'll see, there's not a lily pad in sight. Here's another photo. This one was taken in 1981. That's the 8th grade graduation class from St. John's School. And as you can see, again, there's not a lily pad in sight. They didn't come around until a Ramsey watershed went, and this is what they found. And as you can see, there's a metal grate above that. Before that, when Don Carter built this back in 1972, I think it was, or 73, it was a wooden structure, and had to go over and take a board out, as they phrased it, to get the lake at its level as proper. Right there, that lake is about 893, which is putting it about a foot lower than it is today. But as you can see by the size of that pipe, the lake could never get any higher than it is today. It's stuck at that level. Here's some of the elevations of buildings around the lake before that was put in. This is what the lake looked like a few years ago. You can see the west side of where I live is all covered with lily pads, and now they've made their way over to here. And if you go by Keller Lake tonight on 36, take a look at the North Shore. Where do you think all those lily pads have all come from? And they're all white, like the ones we've got here. And supposedly you can't get rid of a white one, but they've never been there. They were brought in. Here's one of the building plans, and you can see they're listing the height of the water is higher. Ordinary high water mark is what we've got set. These are the current FEMA map. Shows them at 898, and these are numbers that I understand came from you. So I kind of wondering why we have 898 as FEMA plans, and yet at the lake we're calling it 4 feet lower. if you get 4 feet more water, you're not gonna have very many of those lily pads. I've got the letter here, it's in this file that I got from Eric Court showing that the lily pads.
Can I ask you a question? You're obviously familiar with the lake over time. I'm not sure how long you've lived there, but
I've lived across that lake since 1974.
in your experience, is the depth of the lake significantly changed?
I've never been out in the middle of that lake myself, but when I got there, Clarence Ron was there and he bought his property when he came home from World War II. I asked him how deep it is. And he said it's 8 to 12 feet out there. Right now, you can walk across there and you're not gonna get your belt wet.
Okay.
This here that I got from Eric Court, fortunately, I made a copy of it myself. Says that lily pads aren't gonna grow in deep water. If I can just took my original copy of that and I've never seen it since. I talked with Jennifer Thornton when she first came back here from, or came here, I should say from Rapid City or out there in the hills. And when I got her to go down to the west side of the lake alongside the fence, she stepped through a large pipe. She says it's illegal drainage going into that lake. That pipe is still there because I've never been able to get a hold of her since that day. I don't know, somebody's telling her not to call me, she doesn't like me. I don't know what it is. So I'm not getting anybody who wants to talk back to me. I would say that it's been about 8 years since I've had a turtle in my yard. I've always had turtles come across, snapping turtles. Always had snapping turtles come across from there. We've had raccoons. There's no raccoons around there. We had a pair of loons came in about 6 years ago. They lasted about a week and they were gone. There's no place for a loon to operate on that lake now. There's very few geese on that lake now. You don't find any herons over on that lake. It's created just virtually a dead hole of water that's covered with lily pads. And it was a few years ago that you guys come in and put in the new gate valve, but it's not really a gate, I shouldn't say a gate valve, it's just a weir, and it's lower than that pipe that goes out. Before that, that pipe was allowed to be closed, so you could keep the lake level up where it belonged. Now with your management of it, you've kept it about 5 feet lower than it normally is, which allows the lily pads. Lily pads came across the street from me. I don't know if you see it on the Home and Garden or what it was, but that house was up for the ugliest house in the Midwest. Fortunately, it didn't make it, but the gal was there before. I thought she was an artist, and she built a little small dock. It's probably the size of this here. It's still down there in the water right now. And she brought lily pads, planted them around it, so she could paint a picture of that. I've got 4 neighborhood kids that were down there the day that she was planting the lily pads, and they questioned her, and she said, "No, it's okay. I've got them from another lake, and they're the white kind." But there were none before until she planted them. They were never taken out. They've never been removed. She's long gone, but if you don't take them out, you can see what has happened to them. We dropped the water down to where lilies will grow. So I'd ask you, how about let's just go over and shut that valve off, or that gate off, and let the water go back up to 899, 898, which is FEMA map. And the other maps that I got one here from 64 when the highway was built, showing it was 899. And now we're suddenly sitting at 894. We're 5 feet below. We're growing lily pads, and we've destroyed a lake. And I think, as far as you guys, you shouldn't be able to walk a quarter mile over and see a lake that's been destroyed under your nose.
So your request is to change the lake level with outlet pipe closure. Is
Oh, no, I just think to do it like it was originally was planned, and I've got city council meeting.
I know that we had this discussion last year. I think Tina and Val probably followed up with you with
I
some
was asked to
information.
provide copies of all this. You want copies of every page that I've got here. I asked that I'd be able to come over here and do the printing. I never heard back. It's obvious it's something that nobody really in this room cares about except me. And I don't know why underneath the guidelines of when your name out front and you've destroyed the lake, there is no wildlife around that lake anymore.
Is it, whose authority, Tina?
Well, so I'll
Or-
just name, if you want me to,
Yeah, I know this was a discussion point and you were gonna take it
yeah, so I
offline.
mean, Rocky and I have talked many times over the years, and I
A
know,
couple of times, but not enough.
well, quite a few times over the years, and I know Cliff too, in his time here, so it's been many years since we've had discussions around the water levels. We did, and I don't have all the data in front of me about what year, but it was probably 20 years ago, when we changed the outlet. We improved, so, yeah, what is it, let's say 2004. So 22 years ago, we did improve the outlet on that. And we put it at the approved elevation, the elevation that we returned it to the elevation was at. Rocky's mention about those wood weirs were put in by the neighbor resident that kept it elevated higher than was approved. So when we improved that outlet, we worked with the DNR to set the elevation at the correct elevation. And then actually like a year later, we did go back and ask the DNR if we could raise it a foot, and it was raised a foot at that point. What that took was the approval of the DNR and all of the property owners around that lake. So we believe the elevation is at the correct elevation that it can be at. And as far as the lily pads go, we don't manage native. We wouldn't manage native lily pads on that lake. We've, told Rocky and any residents, we've had one resident, I think, a few years back that contacted us, but otherwise it's just been to Rocky, that the DNR, if you want to work on control or management, you'd have to work through the DNR on that for permitting. Jennifer Sorensen was our DNR hydrologist years ago, and now I believe Dan Scullin, I don't know if you've been in touch with him at all, but he's our current hydrologist. So,
And they would have, the
Yeah, so-
DNR would also have vegetation specialists.
yeah,
Yep.
so it would be the vegetation. The DNR would be responsible for the elevation of that outlet and for the vegetation. And I did coordinate with Dan, I think last time Rocky was in, and I'm not sure, can't remember where that.
Yeah, so it sounds like the general background is that the watershed has done their due diligence and has set the water level where we were told. Vegetation management, like Tina said, is under the purview of the DNR.
Well, this one here is a picture of it that was taken by your people.
Yeah.
Why was there this gate valve here? Why was that ever put in?
I don't know that we need to go
No,
back on the back.
I give you
and
just
forth
a couple
at this
minutes,
meeting,
please, I'm
but-
trying to save the damn lake.
Is it is that,
This was put in
is that the
by,
current outlet?
yes, no, it isn't, it's down here. The current outlet is lower than that pipe.
But does the current outlet have that gate valve?
No, Ramsey-Watershed tore that out.
Yeah.
Before that, it was a wooden one.
Yeah, we put in the new outlet and we put it at the elevation that was described by the DNR to us.
And you could barely get into this pipe. Why would you put a gate valve on a pipe?
Well, that's not existing anymore. That may
You
not have,
destroyed it.
that may not have been installed originally by the watershed. That may predate the
No, you
watershed.
got one around. It was Don Carley's engineering. Don Carley is, well, he couldn't be here tonight. He'll never be here tonight. But this was here, but before that, there was a wooden lattice. And I can bring in, or I can have a guy talk to you, the one on the left. I get a little excited here and I forget where we're going, but him and Vern Montgomery took care of this, and they always talked about having to go pull a board out of the dam when we had rain. This is spring-fed lake. So it will fill up, and if you look at these pictures, why isn't it just like it was in 1957? And I've got the minutes from the council, they're saying they want to maintain this as a lake and not a swamp.
And have you, had conversations with your neighbors?
They don't care.
Properties? They have no care, and you don't have a lake association of any sort.
No, I think there was one time, except the guy that was in charge of it, his wife had one, introduced the lily pads.
I will
And
make
he also
another
got
note
them
that
come in and they,
there's homes on the east side of the lake that would be at risk of flooding if it were a high.
And I'm sure that's part of the reason the elevation was set where it was set. We do have,
there's a letter, I don't know if I sent it around with you guys on that, anything close to their house will still be under the 899. So you can raise that water level 4 feet and you won't touch a house.
Well, that might have been with old information too, so that the Atlas 14 modeling shows that.
yeah, there's.
How about I don't take any more of your time up? And I get some of you people that will meet with me and I can go through all of this here because what I get is, well, believe what I say as well as what's being said here. I have no skin in the game on that lake.
I don't think
I think it's a
anyone,
good thing for the city. I think it should go back to being like a lake. The council said in 1974 that they were gonna put this outlet in and it was going to maintain it as a lake and not a swamp. And if that's anything like a lake over there,
there's a lot of history in between 1974 and today. The watershed wasn't formed until, what year was that? 1975, so a year after the council. And
yeah.
been a lot of change since that time,
The
including
major
flood
thing
audit.
then you guys lowered the lake level 5 feet.
Tori, did you want to jump in here? I see you turned your camera.
Yeah, I've just kind of been monitoring the conversation. I would note that the public comment has been exceeded. If the managers wanted to continue the conversation, they certainly can. I just thought I'd make that note, and this can certainly be added to an agenda for next month's meeting or in the future when the board can be more prepared to have this discussion at length.
And that's kind of where I was going, is I would need
When do you want me here?
Tina and the managers would probably need to have a conversation around the history of this lake and the outlet first to see all the things that we've kind of discussed in addition to other items that maybe we didn't bring up tonight. We can make that happen and we can look at your file and see how it lines up. But I think we do need to table this discussion for another time. I don't know when that will be, but Tina, can we kind of gather what we've got and maybe just circulate it to the managers?
15 years.
Rocky, well,
We need to do some.
30 years old.
I'll circle up with the
Maybe have
board.
another 15.
All right, thanks, Rocky.
Thanks, Rocky.
You set up, I'll be here. And see where we go from here.
All right.
I'm a good citizen of this city.
There's no doubt.
I don't know if you guys were out here this weekend for Canadian Days. That was mine. I got every dollar donated for that. And I put it together and it's not 50 years it's been going. It's 52 years it's been going. Have you been up Little Canada Road across from Donut Hut? There's a veteran memorial. That's another one of my projects. And if you go up there, I wish every one of you go up there. Spend 5 minutes and come back and tell the city what you think of it. There is nothing but weeds and crap for grass up there. The KIA pavers are sinking out of the sight. One of them is got Ronald A. Krebsbach in there. And if you look at all the history, you'll find damn few medics with a Silver Star. I never met him, but he's up there, he's got a Silver Star. His daughter was born about 3 months after he was killed in Cambodia. And Billy Miranda up here on the Labour Road was the last person in Little Canada to talk to him. he was on a boat that took him in there.
Sir, I thank you for your commentary tonight, but the managers do have other business to attend to.
Issue. Call me, you got my number,
Thanks, Rocky.
name me when and where, and if you want, I'll bring in one of the kids, who'll tell you. See what
Thank
the
you,
road
Rocky.
has to be
Have a good-
planted.
Have a good night.
If you want that, I'll get it for you.
All right, we're gonna move on to.
Sorry.
No, you're just fine. Thank you for coming in. Moving on to the regulatory program monthly memorandum.
Yeah, I just wanted to say for Nikki's benefit, you can feel free to drop off anytime. I
Oh, yeah.
wish I would have said that earlier, but or you can stay.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much. I really appreciate.
And I'll follow
Yeah.
up with the team tomorrow as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, monthly memorandum. Believe it or not, it did rain in early July, so that's kind of the focus of the project updates, some impacts, and then getting remedies established quickly on a couple of our sites that we've been inspecting. But I mean, it continues to be a really busy construction season. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else that stands out unless there's questions.
I don't have any questions. I know you guys are busy and you do a good job.
Yeah, a lot of pre-application meetings, so people are already looking to later this year and next year, so.
Yeah, I just make the comment that it seems like the number of inspections are maintaining themselves. Just as Ben said, we've been busy, we seem to be doing a good job, so.
Pass that along to the folks that are out there more than me.
All right, stewardship grant program applications.
Yeah, we've got application 2627 CS coming back to you from last month. You guys had a few extra questions about some of the cost ratios as well as the pollutant reductions. So I provided a little bit of an update on that. The application was reviewed by the Ramsey County landscape designer. So we made sure that the application was meeting grant eligibility when we brought it to the board meeting. So of the whole project costs, they're just shy or just over $24,000 for grant eligible items. The majority of that is for the native plant installation. We have made notes to them that they are at that 75% mark, so that if they do end up having to swap any plantings, they'll have to double check with us to make sure they're maintaining that ratio for native plants to maintain grant eligibility. So, and because it's reimbursement, we'll be double checking that before we reimburse it as well. The porous pavers are generally 75% cost share eligible. However, based on the site and where it's taking drainage and from existing conditions to proposed, we did recommend 50%. Although the treatment of the area that it is receiving is over 90%. So it is a small area captured, but it is still treating everything it's capturing. So we're just about it. I'll take any questions.
No questions, just a comment. I appreciate the additional memo and the work you went through and the review. By Ramsey Soil and Water. However, I still fail to see how this pervious pavers directly disconnects the stormwater or the runoff from this area, disconnecting it from any storm drain. I don't see it. And so I still have a difficult time with that portion of this particular stewardship grant also.
Yeah, I think if that's the a criteria that the board is interested in seeing put into the grant program, that's not been a consideration previously.
I think
Most projects are not keeping water from street runoff; they're actually capturing
it's
runoff.
stormwater, right? So permeable, the pervious pavers are for stormwater benefit, and so I don't see stormwater runoff because I don't see it going directly into the storm drain. That's my understanding.
Okay, yeah, I think how we're viewing stormwater is it's coming and hitting a hard surface and moving over hard surface to be captured, rather than where it's going from being captured to where there. So in this instance, it is capturing hard surface runoff, albeit it is a pool deck, but we've, as part of the grant program, it has driveways and like sidewalks and small patios have been considered eligible where they're
I
capturing
understand,
drain
because-
spouts.
Yeah, I mean, because there are drain spots, correct?
Yeah, and
Drain
those are
spots will
typically,
will typically allow drainage into a storm drain, so off the property, whereas this one drains completely onto grass.
yeah, I would say the majority of our stewardship grant projects don't drain off of the site or capture water that would be otherwise draining off the site. So most downspouts on homes are just overflowing across lawns.
I think you need to look at it as
Yeah.
an individual item. We are not taking runoff from adjacent landscaping, adjacent lawn. It is strictly rain that is falling on this hard surface is then being transferred to these permeable pavers, which are acting as a sort of infiltration basin. They are going to build the pool either way in my mind. I've been juggling with this. It is better that they do a pervious paver installation than just take out pervious area for impervious. So I appreciated what you put in here as far as usually it's 75%, we're thinking 50. So it's better than an alternative that's completely impervious, which we have no say in how they develop their landscape. So I guess in my mind, it is better than not treating it all.
If that were entirely pervious, as opposed to what they are proposing, impervious, and particularly a heavy event, then that could generate all pervious, more runoff that would be carried out across the yard and potentially into a street, and might be X gallons. This amount is going to be X minus this amount. So,
yeah, and that number, I don't know if the number is super relevant or tangible, but the volume captured is almost 1,300 cubic feet. So it's not a tiny amount for residential property either. So I think based on how the pool deck is being graded, the majority of it is going to be captured or tried to be captured in these forest pavers. And so it will be treating 94% of that volume captured.
so as Ben said, I do appreciate the reducing from the 75 costs to the 50.
It may be
It
helpful.
makes it more palatable.
Yeah, it may be helpful to kind of come up with a matrix where, 75% if it's draining from a roof or et cetera. And like you've done here, you've looked at it and it's just this disconnected thing. And so the district would typically fund that at X%.
Yeah, and that's been the kind of, I guess, unwritten formal or
Yeah.
informal matrix of is it taking driveway or roof runoff that hard surface where we would typically see our treatment. And that's where those 75%. It's similar to if there's like a front yard rain garden that's not directly connected to a drain spout. Those are typically considered at 50%, which I believe is in the budget status description. So tried to keep it consistent with that. We can definitely look at formalizing that a little bit more in writing if we do.
That might actually be worth doing. Would be worth doing.
I will make a note.
We feel like there's any other questions, or do we want to take a vote, or are we going to get to a motion? Do people want to discuss how they're thinking?
I would offer a motion that we approve 2627, this application as amended from what previously stuff.
I can't approve that. I can't.
All right, we don't have a motion, so it is.
Well, I think you could second it if you.
If we brought, I would second, but it sounds like we've got two people that would vote. Well, we'll just take a vote. I will second, and then we'll have an official decision. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those against?
Nay.
Any, so that does not carry.
No, I think it does.
It is.
2-1.
Yeah, 2-1.
You don't need the
I
quorum.
think. No, I think just we need a majority of
Of
those
the quorum?
present. Is that correct, Tori?
Yep, that's correct. I was gonna say, if it's 2-1, that carries.
Okay, so it does carry. And then we'll move on to the action items. So we'll start with action item 7A, the Ramsey-Washington. I'm sorry, yes, budget status report.
Nothing super notable, I would say. I'll take any questions. We're just past, or a little over halfway past through the year, and as well as we're just shy of halfway through the budget. So yeah, I'll take any questions.
There are a lot of projects coming in. Do we anticipate getting through the stewardship funds?
Yes, yeah, for the most part, we've got several, last time I checked with the designers, I think we have like over 30 in final design queue right now, so they're moving through those as fast as they can. We've got a few more in Washington County as well that are gonna come through. Those are a little bit smaller. So we'll be pushing on the budget, but I don't anticipate pushing right up to the end. We do have a decent chunk of those funds also set aside for the design costs and any engineering we need.
And some of these buckets where we haven't seen projects, shoreline restorations, chloride projects, are there any of those that we think are gonna be moving this year?
Yeah, the shoreland, there is one or two. What we've been seeing this year in particular is there have been projects along lake shores, but typically they've been in areas that are already stabilized. So we've been calling those native habitat restoration under a native buffer project. So it feels a little skewed. We haven't had as many on the erosion side come through. We've definitely done site visits for those folks. So we'll be following up with some of them, and then also if they're not going to move forward, kind of double checking what's keeping them from moving forward.
So, question or
Yeah.
clarification. So those being vegetation improvements, maybe, even though they are within the shoreline zone, so proximity location, they would not go into that category. They would go into the habitat restoration for rain garden.
Yep. Not the habitat restoration or the rain garden without hard surface drainage at the 50% cost share.
That we have most.
Yeah, so historically how the program had been implemented was that the shoreline restoration was specifically designed for projects that had eroding shoreline, especially under the 100-year elevation. So I think there's a couple of factors where we've done a lot of shoreline projects as the district coordinated, targeted retrofit ones. We have seen a lot of those come in. We have, like last year, I think we had several neighbors on like Owasso come through and do those. And we've had several site visits. We've even got some more scheduled on like Twin Lake and stuff. But we just haven't seen as many of those active eroding shorelines actually moving forward with the project. So yeah, though if we'd like to see that done differently or documented differently, we do track them. So we have like the native buffer. I can pull those numbers pretty easily.
I would appreciate if they're tracked differently or treated differently. I guess I wasn't aware that we had some, what I would have considered to be shoreline projects that aren't necessarily recognized as such. And that category of shoreline restoration was specifically targeted at kind of erosive type practices.
Yeah.
Clarification would be appreciated. Okay. For future.
Just out of curiosity, do you know how many residential lots fall within that erosion category that you're?
Like sites that have active erosion right now, or that have done a project?
That have active erosion sites that have not.
Yeah, so I do not have a good grasp on that. Actually, we were talking with both water quality and the WCD team on how we can actually maybe do some shoreline assessments to then better target some of those properties with active erosion. At this point, without doing a from the lake survey, we don't have a good grasp on how many parcels.
Isn't
Yeah,
that on our
I was
action
gonna
log?
say,
It's something
well,
that
so
we
it's on
want-
our, well, yes, it's on our action line, but also on our implementation table. There's, for the new plan, there is, conduct shoreline assessments.
Yeah.
And so, we'll be working out a way to
Try to do a comprehensive
do
view,
a
to have a
comprehensive
better
view,
understanding.
So we can better target people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we, and we're looking, just as a preview to kind of that conversation, is Paul was the one that I was discussing that with, and, you'd like to focus on private, or kind of public lands and then private lands as well. And like Ashley just mentioned, the Washington Conservation District is interested in helping us with that work in Washington County, and so that might be a nice case study for that, and then we can bring it over to things.
Yeah, I'll also add that we are toying around with another phase, probably not through the targeted retrofit this upcoming year, but for staff to push on Lake Owasso. I don't know, there was 4 phases planned on those shoreline restorations, and we've done phase 1 and 2 with the residents. And so staff are looking at starting that outreach for phases 3 and 4 this fall, and then working with Ramsey County to do design, kind of get a lot more of those out. So it is on the radar for that lake.
Anything else related to stewardship grant budgets?
Yeah, maybe next time we can talk about the, what's being done to broaden the awareness on the chloride projects.
Yeah, we are working to get some documents together to do site visits. So we're working through the chloride reduction strategy. We're using some of that. We're going to use some of that mapping and data to go visit and reach out to some of those properties that are higher salt users. So working to get some of that material ready to do that here in the next month or 2.
Good, all right. Action items. Action item 7A, Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Office Improvements Bid Rejection and Authorization to Rebid.
Yeah,
Erin,
well, this is a new one for me. I've done a lot of projects over the years, and this is the first time it happened, but there are provisions in contract documents for things like this, when we get bids that come in that are much higher than we anticipated. We had 2 bidders for this project, and both bidders used the same subcontractor for the heating portion of the project. So we really did not get an array of competitive bids at all. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. We did reach back out to the contractors to ask for some specific information about the heating part of the project. That item in particular, in addition to a couple of others that are listed in this memo, came back really, really high. And so we did ask some specifics of what kind of system were you assuming, give us your data. The type of system that this particular subcontractor recommended would certainly have been accepted, but it wasn't the one that we had been thinking would be most cost effective. When you bid a project like this, or when we bid a typical project, usually we are trying to be as descriptive as possible in what we want, but refrain, if possible, from mentioning specific brands of things unless we know there's a reason we need that thing. So pave drain is mentioned in the specs on one hand because we have pave drain on site. We know that we like that product. We say we want you to use pave drain or an approved equal. We didn't for this first round of bidding specify a specific kind of heating system. Instead, we described what we wanted it to do. And so the way that one of our mechanicals described this is, we told them we wanted pancakes. we want pancakes. You can make these pancakes however you like. We want a cost-effective bid. If you know a great way to make pancakes that we haven't thought of, great, you use that for your bid. But what we got was something perhaps more bespoke and more like made from scratch. And what we really wanted was like a box of Bisquick. So we think that's one potential reason we got a really high quote on the heating element. Also, you know, I mean, we bid this in the middle of the summer. Contractors are busy. We did reach out to some of the prime bid package holders, the plan holders, to ask, you know, is there a reason you didn't bid? And really, folks are busy. They're busy. They didn't have time to bid on the project. The other thing was we had a pretty tight construction timeframe because we wanted this done. I think, what was our deadline originally? Like June of next year, or was it?
No, it was
this
November.
year,
Yeah.
November of this year. That's right. So pretty tight timeframe for construction. So we think that we're recommending to reject the bids, and we're coming up with some ways to rebid the project that allow for a much longer construction timeframe, because there's not really a reason this has to be done this year. So allowing construction to happen through sometime next year will help give some flexibility to bidders, especially since they would be able to bid on a project that they would do much later. So that's one thing. Also, we would be specifically naming the system that we had thought would be the most effective. We'll still say as or approved equal, but nudging them in that direction for something a little bit more prepackaged will help our cause there. Also, it may allow some prime contractors to feel a little more comfortable engaging in the project, because it's kind of a turnkey system that we had been thinking they would drift to. So, and in addition, we would be structuring the bid document such that if for whatever reason we get high bids again for that heating element and the board and staff are not comfortable pursuing that element of the project, we'd be able to tease it out easily and go forward with the project as a permeable paver project and not a heated permeable paver project. Still really would like to get competitive bids for the heating portion, but if for some reason this is just too bespoke or something, we want to have that flexibility going forward. So that's why we recommend that we reject these bids and that we rebid the project. We are trying to do this so that we would be able to bring bids back to you next month. That's coming up really fast, so I can't promise that, but it would be either next month or in October, if you approve of that approach. So any questions? Or
The only question I had was a very good explanation, and it's maybe too detailed, but in your conversations with contractors, did you find out, like, are there a lot of subcontractors with the expertise to put these in, or are there only a couple and those are artificially inflating the pricing?
I don't think that that's it. I know there were, I think, 3 other plan holders that would have been completely qualified. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's a contractor scarcity issue. I think it was a time issue, and the fact that we ended up having 2 bidders that were using the same sub. Nothing against that sub, but you know, you usually see like
Bigger variety.
4 or 5 different bids, and you can get a really wide range of costs. It just happened we just had 2, and they both use the same sub. So we're not getting the variety of bids that we like to see in a public bid process. So,
and both those bids were substantially higher than we probably expected.
Substantially higher. And you notice in the memo, we did have discussions with legal counsel, and they reviewed this Minnesota statute that says bids exceeding 30% of the total estimated construction cost must not be considered because both of our bids exceeded that. It's just a no-go. Regardless, even if there wasn't a state statute, we would still recommend that you reject these and rebid the project.
My only question is, and it may not be a fair question, but by rejecting these and rebidding, we're gonna kick it down the street from a scheduling standpoint. And likely it's gonna be maybe initial construction might happen this year, but I think if I remember right, it was construction primarily in 2027. And so are we going to realize just some increase in costs because people raise their costs, you know, the prices? I mean,
Yeah.
Is that like a 5% change, or do we expect that our
Yeah.
estimated bid cost will still be reasonable?
I think, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. I think, you know, I think contractors, we've seen this before, like if there's a contractor that's really busy, or if it's falling at a time of year where they've got plenty to do, they will jack their prices up because it's like, well, I don't really have time, but for this price, I would make time. I could hire people. I think that's more at play here. I mean, I appreciate the comment, that's possible. But I think that the timing is a bigger factor than pushing it out a
Yeah,
little
just
bit.
a note about that too. So we pushed out the time that they could do the project, but we just still said, that once they start
60
construction,
days.
they have 60 days to complete it. So it's just giving them the option of seeing where in their schedule they could fit it in or want to fit
More
it in,
flexibility
more
from a timing
flexibility.
standpoint for them.
Yeah, and they, it's nice when we can, we wanted to fit this in this year if possible. We tried that, but it is nice when you can give contractors some lead time so they can, because they're trying to schedule all these different projects. It's got to be very difficult, right? So anytime you can give them that kind of flexibility, you are more likely to get a competitive price.
So
So
we know if either of these bidders has produced or installed other heated parking lots?
we didn't, so that's a great question. We did not go back and ask them for evidence of experience because we knew we sort of, it was a stop the presses moment. We knew that we wouldn't be proceeding, but we do have provisions in these bid documents to ask. In fact, it's very clearly laid out in the instructions to bidders that we will be following up to ask your experience on these types of projects because it is so specific.
And I've already forgotten the city, but there was one that had installed a heated parking lot for their community center.
Yeah,
I think it was probably on the west side of town. Do we know who did their?
well, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. We could find out. Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, we'll be advertising this just like we did the other ones. We'll be reaching back out to the plan holders to say, hey, we're doing this again. I mean, there's nothing illegal about getting the word out about the fact that there's bid process. So, I mean, to your point, we'll be looking for ways to get the word out. Another thing that we'll do differently this time is that we're planning to do a pre-bid meeting. We didn't have one of those for this last round. We didn't really think that we needed one, but it's another way to make sure that people are coming to take a look. I don't know if we'll make it mandatory or not. We'll see, but the other thing that seemed to happen on a couple of items here is that their prices for a couple of units were so much higher than ours that we thought, did they like take a look at the site? Because that seems really off. So we're gonna try to lure people here also to come and ask some questions and to take a look, just in case there was other things that,
Any uncertainties?
yeah, any uncertainties or whatever. So we'll give it another solid round, and if you agree, and we'll see what happens.
Is it common for the watershed to bid projects with the pancake method, or are we typically more prescriptive?
Yeah, I love that metaphor so much. I think, I mean, it just depends.
Depends on the
So,
project.
yeah, I mean, and we still say or approved equal.
Yeah,
I think, I mean, in retrospect, I think we should have said that, we had been kind of looking at this one particular kind of unit that we knew to be used in this kind of application. It would have been helpful in retrospect to say, hey, we're looking at this for approved equal. But this is the first one we've done for the district, and it just seemed like, well, we have a whole spec section that talks about what the system should do. And what they submitted would probably have been approved. It's a lot more expensive. And maybe I don't know if this knew or didn't know about this kind of system. Perhaps it's a newer thing. I don't know. So I think, if we're doing something that is a little bit less familiar, it doesn't hurt to put that nudge in there, but you know, contractors do know a lot of good stuff though too, so you never want to like discount their creativity. So it's a balance.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's a fair question.
Any other questions or comments? Can we have a motion to reject the two bids received for the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District office site exterior improvements based on Minnesota Statute 103D.811 and authorize staff to re-advertise the project for bid?
Move to reject the received bids and authorize rebidding.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstaining? So approved.
Thank you.
Yes, so action item 7B, the Fish Creek Tributary Stream Restoration Approval of Plans and Authorization to Advertise for Bid.
Yeah, so this one you've seen, I think a few times now. The tricky part with this one is that, on one hand, it's all teed up, it's ready to go out to bid. We've got our opinion of cost in there. You can see all the plans all ready to go. But as you heard, or actually, I guess we were just talking before the meeting, that these grants are taking a while to be executed. So we won't have, the district won't have what was it called?
Executed
Grant agreement until at least this fall. I think, I mean, November would probably be the earliest. And it could be later than that. And we don't want to get this going before that's in place because you won't be able to be reimbursed if stuff starts before it's approved. So what we're asking is your approval for us to put this out to bid when we have an executed grant agreement. So this will sit until we get that executed grant agreement, and then we would put it out to bid shortly thereafter. So I think the memo reads a little bit like we're going to turn around and post it. But since then, we've heard that the grant agreements won't come out for a little bit. So we'd rather wait until that's the case. And this project can't really be constructed during the winter months. So it's likely that this work will be moving to next year.
For the spring, yeah. Just a reminder, this was one of the PFAS grant approvals for $850,000.
So just for clarity, then it's the PFAS grant that's taking a while.
Yeah, the grant agreement.
Okay, however, the watershed-based implementation funding has to be spent by December 2027.
Okay. Yeah, so we feel like we still have a good window opportunity to get all that spent before the end of next year.
So
I can.
we know we've been, okay, yeah.
So some questions. One of the few things that one thing I noticed is that there are quite a few trees being removed in this project. And it just sparked a kind of a ding, ding, ding in my mind because commissioners are very sensitive to resident complaints that trees are being removed.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So kind of a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Who can see the trees being removed? Who knows about it? And then I definitely would have to contact the respective commissioner to say, we have over, I don't even know, like 140, some trees that are going to be removed, some of them quite sizable.
So this project has been going on for a long time. So I apologize that you probably weren't here when we went through the process to get easements.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
But
so all those landowners were made very aware of the project and the loss of trees. So we went through a whole process with them to show them renderings and, like what this is going to look like when it's done, in order for them to be comfortable to sign the easements so that the project could move forward. So there's 5 landowners, now I can't remember, there's 4 or 5 landowners, and Dave has talked to them at length over the years. And we've been communicating with them throughout this whole process. So I don't believe there'll be any surprises. And of course, now when the trees come down, it's a different story when it happens, but it's a good comment to Yeah, we'll continue to be working with them. Dave looks like he wants to share some of his interactions.
Yeah, I've talked with all the property owners and they know what's coming, and we actually have letters of support that we got for them for the project to get this grant project that I can share if you guys want. I can send it to Tina right now, but they know it's coming for sure.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, it's just further kind of
Yeah.
builds a case for the
Mhm.
commissioner to say, yes, I see that we have this letter of support from property owners, just to, in case it's somebody else down the road that sees what's happening.
Appreciate that. Yep, that's a comment.
I guess my question was more on the funding side. Is there a way to play like a shell game with budget to get this bid and kind of spec like this $230,000 worth of work is done now, and then kind of fit the other one in on the back end? I'd hate for the grants to kind of lag and then we don't get a project.
Maybe we would consider that if it's still December
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we don't have the grant
yeah.
agreement.
Or are the watershed-based implementation funds, can you extend those? Or are those like use it by this date or it's done?
Probably not extend, because we're gonna be starting
Yeah,
round of them too. I don't know that answer for
Okay.
sure, but I can check on that. But even if it is delayed into the beginning of next year, like you said, I think then we can play that shell game a little bit
Okay.
and, use those funds first.
yeah. So you're pretty
For
confident we'll be
reimbursement.
able to accomplish this, the grant timeline,
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah, I think.
My question. Silence my phone. Is about the easement boundary, and this is, and several of the figures, and I'm just, if I understand the nature of the project, a lot of this creek has been down cutting, and we want to reconnect the floodplain, and from a stream kind of functional standpoint, that those are all great things to do. It looks like it's a fairly narrow, in my mind, fairly narrow easement for that stream corridor, and knowing that streams over time will move. And if we have any particularly wet years, big events, who knows? Is there a chance that might, go outside of the boundary? Because there are a couple of places where that stream trace seems like, well, that's kind of right up against near the edge of the easement. So do we have enough cushion? That's all that I'm.
Yeah, we did a lot of play with that when we were, determining what we were gonna be asking for from the
Yep.
resident. And I guess at the time, Tyler FR was comfortable, Andrea, we're comfortable with the limit that we set for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an elevation thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm not having seen any of the easement language. I don't know how tight it is, if there is some, allowance that, well, this might exceed this.
I mean, it's nature, so it could
Yeah,
move, right?
I wouldn't want to have somebody come back and as a liability to us.
Yeah, I don't
That's
think the
something-
movement of the creek would be the problem, but if we needed to get in and do any maintenance, that would be the concern, but I don't anticipate that. I mean,
Because it seems, now I may be wrong, but it seems like our judgment of the need for the extent of the easement was largely to complete the project in construction. But then beyond that.
Yeah.
Did we think beyond that in terms of just the functionality of the project, streams moving and so forth?
yeah, I don't think that, I think you're right. I think the goal of the easement purchase was for the construction, and that's typically, I would say, the point of those easements, right? And to be able to get in at least in the center line of that creek and be able to do any maintenance that would need to be done. So I think we're covered for that piece of it. As far as the movement of the creek, I think creeks can move, and that's. you know, if it moves outside of the easement and we needed to get in there, we'd have to get approval from the landowner to
Again.
do that, yeah.
Okay,
I would anticipate that being more of a longer term, you know.
What is the long-term expectation of these landowners as far as maintenance? Like, if there's down trees, are they expecting that the watershed remove those, or?
I mean, we would do anything that would restrict flow.
Yeah.
That would be our responsibility. Which is what we do, even if we don't have easement.
Yeah.
I have one other question that's probably minutia, you may not know at this point, just given this. But I think we're at 90% design, or is it 100?
I think we're at 100.
Yeah, 100.
We've been sitting on it a little bit.
Yep.
Waiting for the grant.
That there is mention about bed material and the need in some of the definite and rock weirs and so on, to bring some bed materials in to kind of improve the string functionality.
Mhm.
And again, kind of earlier conversation about, I'm wondering about sourcing that bed material. Is it likely to come from down gradient within Fish Creek, or is it likely to come from an outside source? I'm just trying to have a little comfort,
Sure.
from that.
That's a great, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can get that answer for you. So if I can circle back.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
You know, from a size, cobble sizing and all that. I'm sure
Yep.
you got your stream geomorphologists that probably.
Yep. There's
nail
a
those
spec
things, but
section, yeah.
Just trying to make sure that, you know, checking.
Yep.
That, we want to have a really functional, high quality stream.
Comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the preliminary design estimated costs and proposed project schedule and direct staff to finalize design and bidding documents and advertise for bid?
I will, take that motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstained, motion passes. And
Great, you have something? She just came on camera.
yeah, we're moving to the attorney report.
Yeah.
That would be why.
You are efficient.
On time.
I'm used to my camera kind of lagging, so I try to get going ahead of time. But I've popped up a couple times tonight, so I know it's working well. Not a whole lot to report tonight. Our office has been pretty busy in July, just with all the activity going on in the district. Other than the kind of regular contract review we did, we provided some additional guidance regarding some administrative, procedural, and operational matters. Let me know if you have any questions for me.
Sound like it. That means you're doing great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. Board discussion topics. Did any board member have anything they wish to discuss? I did not have anything at this time.
No, nothing now.
I might just, can we circle back to Rocky a little bit?
Yes, that's
And-
maybe a good time.
And think about, so I certainly can come back with a memo about our history and
Yeah.
understanding of the system. I don't know that it's beneficial to have back and forth with
Yeah. cut
Rocky
that
at a
feeling.
meeting, but I'm happy to hear how you would like to proceed with that, or if you'd like to have that discussion when Val and Gabby are here too, that's fine. But
Might be helpful to discuss with them as well, but in my mind, it's more of a memorandum from the board to Rocky. You know, I recognized him when he walked in. I couldn't remember his name, but I knew he was
Yeah.
the lily pad
yeah,
guy.
Yeah.
May just be helpful to have a memorandum with the timeline,
yeah,
what we did under what direction,
Yeah.
and just be able to refer back to that, because, you know, the outlet that he's showing is not a district outlet. That was something that we replaced.
Yeah.
And there's some things in his mind that the council agreed to prior to the watershed even being in existence, so that's also an issue. And I don't know that we're going to ever come to any type of cohesive
mean,
conclusion.
we've certainly shared, everything we can share with the board in that memorandum has been shared with Rocky.
Yeah.
many times. But it might be nice to,
Just make
share it
it,
with you all so that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was just kind of curious, how did the follow-up from last year's?
Right, so we had asked, Val and I had asked Rocky to provide his folder of documents, and he said, I just want it back to 1973. And that was kind of the end of that discussion. And it's a perennial. It's kind of how it, we've said we'd like to hear, your, or we'd like to know what you're asking for, is what we asked, and he said he was asking for it to be back to 1973. I again shared our points, kind of our timeline and understanding of the systems, and gave him contact information for the DNR again, to have those discussions. Part of the thing is that he doesn't live on the lake. He lives across the street from the lake, and we do not hear from residents on the lake about this either. So it's like, he can go to the DNR, but it would be the lakeshore owners that would be, needing to ask for control of the lily pads, for instance, if that was something. The DNR said they won't, they don't allow treatment of native plants. The other thing to note is Savage Lake is technically wetland.
Yep.
It's not a lake system. And so our management is a little different too. It's not a lake system, so we don't treat like a lake.
I was gonna offer a suggestion that there were to be a meeting, that perhaps it might be worthwhile to have DNR, or vegetation and hydrologists, and maybe somebody's from the city as well, so that, because Rocky talked with everybody over time.
And we have been together in the room years. It's been a few years, but.
Yeah, but maybe, and I would certainly yield to your judgment, Tina, but it seems like he's just gonna keep beating the drum, and maybe if he hears from kind of everybody and gets kind of a unified sense, it might be enough. Well, I don't know.
I don't get the feeling that there's any resolution that he will accept, other than if we were to say, we'll raise the lake or the wetland.
I mean, I think what I can do is provide you all the information, and then you can help guide us, staff, on how you'd like us to proceed. And
I think that's a good start, and I think we should have the other members for any further steps.
One question I would ask, if what he's representing, if it is true that the lake had been at whatever it was, 993 or something, at some point in the past, and now it's set at, he thinks 4 feet lower. What would be the rationale for why we cannot raise that? That
can all be at the memo, because those elevations are quite exact. So we put the outlet, just spoiler, that we put the outlet back at the elevation that it was at.
Right.
So the invert of that elevation is the same now as it was in 1973. It was those stop logs that were put in by a resident and maintained by a resident.
That they could raise it.
So they blocked the drainage so that it would be elevated. There was some clogging issues, and so it was even hard. It was even raised even higher. And so we went in to, improve that outlet. And so when we improved it, like I said, we set it at that elevation that was approved by the DNR. There was concerns about the lower water level, because now it's much lower than they were used to it being. And the DNR approved a 1 foot increase, and that was signed by all the landowners. So they were able to get that. As it is now, with that 1 foot elevation higher, there are homes that would be at risk if it were any higher. So
it's a flood issue.
it would be a flood issue as well.
On the east side?
On the east side. I don't believe that there would be homes on the west side. I think the lowest homes are on the east side.
And they've got plenty of water roads on that side too.
Yeah, the
Both
east side
east and
is
west.
covered. The west is somewhat covered.
Is that one of the maps that he was passing around, the FEMA one that says the higher one, that would be a flood map,
I'm
right?
guessing that was the 100-year.
The 100-year flood elevation.
And it's probably also changed at this point.
There's datum
And
corrections
it's-
With,
Yeah,
you know,
all
that
sorts
was
of things that could come into
14,
play
that
that way.
Yeah.
yeah,
Get
I'm sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
Our 100 years, 898.3,
Now
Okay.
it's 890.
898.3.
That's our 100-year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a flood elevation. Not a normal.
Yeah, so I don't know, it would be nice to have all of that pulled together in a cohesive. You know, if that could be shared. with the
Yeah, well,
board.
I can put that in a packet, and then we can discuss how we want to engage with Rocky.
Okay. On to new reports and presentations, 2027 budget planning.
Yes, so, I have a memo in here that with the table and some background on the line items. You know, as we talked about last month, I said I would bring in everything that we had slated for 2027. And made some kind of rough estimates for carryover and other funding, like grant funding. Those aren't estimates, but those are in there as well. And with that information, I right now show a 14.58% increase. So that's looking at everything. And again, kind of crude look at carryover, which can, you know, significantly change the needs depending on, you know, what we have left at the end of the year. I think I made a mention in there, you know, that we have a considerable increase in our targeted retrofit projects. We have a lot of projects that have been working on over this last year, 2026, that are, you know, kind of prepping for 2027. Some are further along than others. So there is room to, you know, push some of those projects forward to 2028. I mentioned the Hazelwood Professional Center and the Battle Creek Subwatershed TSSP implementation. Hazelwood is, you know, a little further along, but they're not as far along as like 1670 Beam, I should say Beam, not Beam Avenue, and the city of Landfall. That one we've been working for a while too. That one's looking good to be able to go in 2027. So we also have quite a bit of money for future retrofit project development, and that is based on some of the projects that we are looking, you know, for the future as well. So there could be some opportunities there to consider pulling for 2027 so that we can get closer to our budget and targets for that year. To make a note in the memo that I think it's might be wise to consider a small increase in levy this year. That, you know, holding steady, we've held steady for the last 2 years at 0% increase. That, you know, having a small increase might be prudent just to kind of keep on track with the needs of the district, inflationary concerns, just being ready for, you know, the future budgetary planning. Open for thoughts on that. Some of the other, you know, our project repair and maintenance is a big project, but we have, well, I have the office site improvements. That would be all carryover because we planned that for this year. But we also have the McKnight Basin repairs, which is a bigger project. I also always plan about $1 million for our annual project repair and maintenance contract. I don't have a sense yet. I will know more in September even on kind of what the scale of that project might be. So that might get shrunk some. I don't remember how much we had last year, but it's rarely actually at that $1 million point. So it's likely mostly because we get a lot of reimbursement for that through our PEX program. So that's another place where there will be opportunities or could be opportunities to adjust
And then I think our, our feasibility study budget is probably the next biggest in that regard. We're anticipating the wetland assessment project. If we dive into that starting in 2027, that could be a big effort. It's just unclear. There's a lot of unknowns in that yet versus, how much FAR time we'll need for that, and how much staff time, and what that budgetary need might be. A big chunk of that money for project feasibility studies is for stormwater model states, which also can be phased too. So there's some that, we could do in 27 and we could push some back to 28. So those are some of the places where we're looking at, potentially shifting some of that funding needs in order to get our target back, or, get our levy increase closer to that 0. Happy to answer any questions or, hear any commentary on what you're thinking about budget this year.
I guess I would kick it off by saying appreciate the detail that you put into this. Recognize that it's preliminary. There's a lot of content and a lot for us to consider. I would say that the potential of a 14.5 something, I don't think that's palatable.
No.
I don't think that's.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
This was just to show you everything again. Yeah.
I having kept the levy flat for a couple of budget cycles, I'm comfortable with seeing some increase, some smaller level. What that number exactly is, I'm not sure. Probably sub 5 would be easier to take. Somewhere, but yeah, I think we have a lot of enough complexity in the budget that we can kind of push some things off and try to get grants. But I'm a little hesitant to kind of do that whole kind of juggling, pushing things. We've got a number of big projects that I think are maybe on the, talked about shorelines, talked about restorations, once you get the plan in place, and maybe other things. Some of the flood reduction work, there's a lot of good. I don't think we're going to be at a loss with projects. And so I wouldn't want to sort of push too much off, because I think we're going to have a lot coming forward. I'd rather try to manage our budget responsibly, as within that projected time frame of work we expect and hope to be able to do. Well, those are some kind of initial thoughts. I do have a couple more specifics, but maybe I'll let others.
Yeah, agreed. I think more in the range of single digits is much more palatable. And I do appreciate kind of that guidance to say, if we had to, where you've already started through that thinking of, the watershed already does a lot. And so if we had to move or delay something, I think to know which ones they are really would help. And if push comes to shove at some point in time, which ones would we really have to say, well, no, not this year at all. Kind of that list of these are the nice to haves, but it is nice to have.
I think the 2 previous managers summarized it well. I don't have much else to add. Just that prioritization is going to be important. We know there's big issues in water management that are coming up yet, even still, chloride, PFAS, that are not cheap. So being responsible with what can make the biggest impact.
Going back to some specifics.
Yeah.
It's probably a small thing in the grand scheme. There is the addition of the proposed vacancy that would be proposed addition that would be, I think, in the permitting, inspection kind of realm. Which I think is valuable. We had some conversation about that previously. And I'm just curious what the, you know, I said I have to say here, but in your thinking going forward, to kind of zero in on when you realistically think that position might be posted and filled, that, you know, it can take some time. And of course, thinking on, you know, coming on board, you know, on a May versus February, there's a little difference in salary.
Right, right.
So,
Yep. Yeah. In some cases, we would say January 1, you know, like you said, because that would be the budgetary year. If there were funds available, so we do have somebody in the intern position now, Cooper is in our intern position. You know, if we'd like to potentially keep him in that full-time position and not lose him to another job, then we might want to push up the interview and selection process. We can still push out maybe the full-time start date a little bit, or if there's funds left in our salary for this year, we could start him full-time a little earlier if that's the direction we go. There is some flexibility there.
kind of fun to tickle that a little bit.
Yeah.
The other question I have is just maybe a little bit more clarity, and maybe there's not able to do a lot of, but the line 48, the targeted retrofit projects, there's a lot that goes on in that, really important part of work that we do. And I'm just trying to get a better sense. We get grants for some of that. So it's overall that flexibility we talked about from the scheduling. A realistic understanding of what that line item probably we should be thinking about from the levy standpoint. And as a responsible, because it is a big budget item, we do a lot of work there.
Yep. Yeah, that's where I was saying there's those 2 projects that could be delayed, you know, like that's where I could list it out or be a little more clear about what we would be pulling from the budget to get to our budgetary
So
number.
if you could just get that kind of nailed down a little bit
Yeah.
clearer, that if we were to go to whatever Roger told us, 2% levy versus a 4% levy, that difference potentially is, and we wouldn't be able to do this project in this year. Lay that out for future
more
meeting.
clear for the next meeting.
Yeah. That's really all I have.
Yeah, I think I can, you know, shoot for that single digit, maybe around 5 or so for September. Again, you know, one of the strategies around budgeting in September is to keep it a little higher so that when you get to December, you know, don't want to go, you don't want to go have to increase, right, from the preliminary to the final. So you start a little high and then we can always decrease it. So that'll be the public hearing, and that I usually do a presentation at that meeting too that shows the impact on property taxes based on different changes in levy. And I can also include that kind of project delay information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This September meeting, just
September 9th.
Yeah, September 9th, and there was some bouncing around about dates. Do we expect to have most or all managers?
September 9th, everybody was good that day.
Okay.
Yep. It was just this meeting that got bounced around.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other feedback before we move on to the next action or report presentation? All right, we will move on to the communications and outreach plan.
Lauren is here to take the lead on that.
Yes, so it also has a memo attached The communications and engagement plan is in conjunction with the management plan, but is created separately. And part of that is the reason for that is it does give us the flexibility to update it within that 10-year time frame. So when we were looking at this particular strategy and approach, we made the decision to look at 5 years in terms of the overall timeline for this individual strategic plan. And the reason we did that is because we'd like to do an audit halfway through. So this is something that the Capital Region Watershed District did prior to their 10-year plan. They also have a separate communications and engagement plan, and they hired a consultant to review primarily their communications materials and efforts and make recommendations. We see a lot of low-hanging fruit still here that we would like to make progress on before we have an assessment on that level. So that's why we're looking at 5 years. So just an important note there that this is not a 10-year plan, it's a 5-year plan. And then in terms of the feedback on the overall direction, we're a little high level here. So we're asking about goals and objectives, making sure that the overall vision and direction of this plan is in line with your vision and priorities for communications, education, and community engagement. And that it's consistent with the district's mission, core principles, and goals. So a couple of things to note here. We have 2 primary goals listed. One is fostering behavior change, and this is based on research in that area. And that we know this develops over time. So this is something we want to continuously build on. And each one of the primary sections in the plan also has the steps that are that it relates to. So for example, with communications, the primary stewardship pathway is awareness, creating awareness, but we also recognize that communication can help people move from a sense of connection to responsibility. And then we have individual objectives in those particular areas to move into greater effectiveness in reaching the priority audiences that we have listed here for communication. We also recognize that optimally communications and engagement should keep district communities not only informed and involved, but heard. So making sure that the engagement portions, that 2-way communications is left open, and that we continually provide opportunities for listening and engagement. And then the sections, just to give you an idea of what the formatting is. So we have those larger objectives so that some of the final outcome that we're looking for, and then the strategies that we think will help us get to that objective and how we're going to measure success. So that's basically how the plan is formatted. And I'm happy to answer any questions or provide clarity.
I guess I can just start by saying this seems very well thought out. I was impressed with it. Lots of good stuff in here. I didn't have any real questions though, so get over to anyone else.
Yeah, I likewise, I thought that it was very well developed, a lot of thought into it. It largely met what I was probably expecting. So yeah, maybe not the best person in communication, so I appreciate your professionalism in that area. I really like and it sounds like it's come from kind of the realm of communications and action. So, but I really like how it formulates stewardship, that kind of chain of awareness, connections, action. That just resonates with me. A small detail And the vision goal 1. The intent is the protecting and caring for our surface water resources. I would simply say our water resources. I don't want to exclude groundwater and whatever. I just put a pointer to, because I know other places you talk about water bodies and lakes, rivers, and streams.
We could even broaden it more for natural resources.
Sure.
So that we can be more inclusive.
That's really all that I have. I would reserve the opportunity to, because my point of reviewing this, maybe in the mood for whatever, a little more detail. I tend to be that kind of personality, and I kind of get my head into that broad scope. I want to look at it again. I might have some additional contemplation.
I would say, thank you. I applaud kind of this. I agree with Mark. It's very high level, and I do applaud the interest or the intent to do an audit in 5 years. But I do think that you have to put a lot of thought into that, because if you're going to actually measure progress, then you have to make sure that we've got a baseline, and that what you're measuring is typical. Is the question is, what do you want to get to? I mean, this is very open-ended. So it's not just an improvement, but I mean, is it one more, or, is it doubling? That sort of thing. It's hard to say at this point in time, but something I'd encourage you to really put some thought into. Really challenging, and yeah, this is something that I think will take a couple of rounds, and I think Val and Gabby would both appreciate an opportunity to have a chance to provide some more comments or comment on it, and I would too. Again, I'd like to take another cut at it as well.
That's maybe a question. Are you envisioning this to be just from a scheduling standpoint, another year complete, or just kind of?
Oh, no. No, so this will be part of it will be delivered as part of the management plan, so it will be part of the public comment period. There will be opportunities. We just wanted to give you all a chance to look at this before the rest of the management plan is delivered.
Right.
So we basically have until the management plan is finalized to finalize this. Yeah, so and I don't want to neglect some of the engagement areas too, in terms of community advisory committee and to the volunteer management efforts that we're proposing here. Yeah, and in terms of specificity, it's a fine line in terms of, especially with social media delivery. One thing we're looking at is with the 2016 plan, we laid out specifically the channels that we're going to utilize and how we're going to utilize them. And then we realized that changed drastically. So there's some measurables that we kept a little broad so that they could apply to other, like if there are other social media vehicles that, rise in prominence in the next 5 years and ones, disappear. Like Twitter has gone through a major conversion, and so has LinkedIn. LinkedIn has kind of become a major social media channel for some of our audiences. So we have things like year-over-year 5% growth in social media followers for 2 or more channels. So convention in terms of communication and marketing is that you should focus mainly on 2 channels. You don't want to try to build a strategy beyond more than that. Because it can compromise your efficacy.
So may I just make a comment? I think quite frankly, your group has more expertise on which channel you're going to use. I think the part that we would be more interested in is what is the message?
Mhm.
And does it line up with what, we're trying to get out?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe the audience that we're looking for doesn't even use the social media.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, sorry, I'm not very good at it, but I'm probably on some of these, looking at them more frequently than other
Yeah.
folks do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the channel is. I think the connection, however you make that connection, and how effective we are at making that the right connection, the right message, and understanding. And that's the challenge that you have, is to figure out, how do we know that we met, and how do you measure?
Yeah. I should mention also that this is kind of the general plan, but we also have deliverables in both the fluoride reduction strategy and in the equity strategic plan. So while this is kind of an overarching direction, I think when you all see those particular plans, there'll be some specific strategy in terms of those particular concerns and those priority areas. One thing that I can do is, we didn't really institute anything topic specific here. Like, we don't mention fluoride. I think there's one mention of water fest. We don't mention some of the pollutant areas and some of the regular topics that we address. We know they're perennial topics.
And
Reducing-
they can change with time, right?
Yeah, that-
So I think that's, it just should be in alignment with, the top priorities.
Well, that's what Lauren and I talked about, like, this is a guiding document that's kind of guiding the ship, but, her yearly work plan is what looks at what messaging are we getting out, how are we getting it out to who? So there is another layer, of planning that Lauren is doing every year.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And what you mentioned, Stephanie, in terms of the baseline, that's definitely been on my mind. There are a couple of things that we put in here that have helped us with some of the programs create that baseline. So one of them is the annual in-person evaluation meetings with teachers, and we've delivered a survey within the last few years and received feedback from the teachers that the survey is great, but they don't necessarily have time for it. So they actually prefer to give feedback in one-on-one meetings. So we're going to format that a little bit more. We have the community-wide survey. I definitely took Val's comments from the last meeting to heart, that we don't want to put too much weight on that particular survey in terms of moving the needle and public perception, but it is going to give us some indicator of public awareness. Same thing with the Water Fest event survey. I'm looking forward to doing that one again next year with the same format, and see if we've had any movement in terms of awareness of our watershed district and those topics. And I think we're going to try to do that with some of these other areas as well. One of them is an annual volunteer satisfaction survey, and also beginning to track volunteer hours and document the impact of volunteers in this organization. I mean, we can equate that to dollar value as well. So something that nonprofits do, but it's something that we can do here as well.
I would say that I really appreciate the measurables that you put forward, and I might imagine there are probably other measurables that could be added. That's one of the areas that as I was going through this, I was kind of thinking, it just seems like there's more that we could extract out of how people are engaging or participating. So that's something that I would like to think a little bit more about. Well, I really, in this area, again, I'm not the expert, but it seems like to know if you're making progress that whole bench line and the measurables, gotta make sure you have the right measurables. And those they will likely change over time as well.
Was there a particular section that stood out where you looked at it and thought there could be an additional measurable here?
Not particularly, I'm right now on the volunteer management. I don't know, I think just probably tracking the number of hours and the number of volunteers, the number of new volunteers, the number of people that have volunteered for, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. You could kind of play that one out lots of different ways. Demographics, different, age groups, their ethnic, BIPOC, roll that up, pretty extensively. And, some of that you really want to publicize in a sense, but I think it would be valuable to have a sense of going forward.
So a way to measure if our volunteer involvement, maybe engagement in other ways is reaching a range that's reflective of the community we serve.
Yeah, I think so. And to the extent that that broader goal of bringing more people and a greater awareness, the board stewardship, that whole kind of ladder.
Like new touches.
Yeah, and where are they kind of, where are we making the greatest gains? Is it in social media? Is it on one-on-one, the events, the special thing? I mean, to be able to start that out, to see, hey, this is what we're really having here.
Yeah, that's a good example too of where you'll see, and when you see the DEIA plan that's being, put together right now, where there are some measures of more about like where we're going to reach, for new volunteers and the kinds of events that we're seeking out new volunteers at, that's kind of the measures of those tools.
One of the things that we talked about pretty extensively is building in some opportunities to co-design or co-create programming along with partners, whether that's municipalities or community-based organizations or based organizations who in many ways will have a level of expertise about the communities they serve that we're never going to reach. Because of the years of history that the trust established those sorts of things. There's been several examples of this year in which that's happened. And one of them I would name is, the event we did last night with the Black Business Network on the East Side. So, affording the opportunity to build those things along with some of the stakeholders, I think is something that we've really tried to prioritize, and not be too prescriptive in some of the delivery for that reason. So I think it's in the engagement section, and this will also pop up in the equity plan, is we're looking at conducting one-on-one meetings with community leaders, community-based organizations, and elected officials. And that's one of the reasons we want to do that, is we want to sit down and talk about who we are as an organization, but more listen to them and find out what their values and priorities are about water, what their concerns are, and find points of intersection of ways that we can work together, and come up with mutual definitions of success from that. Because again, we don't want to get to a point where we're drafting a plan and then in the end stages going to a community stakeholder or group and recognizing that we've missed the mark. So that's something, maybe I can highlight that a little bit more in this plan too, of why we're looking at doing that and figuring out some indicators of success there.
So I'm just gonna throw out one that's always been at the back of my mind. Linking in the possibility of linking in all of the stewardship grants that we give out. There's been a ton over the years across a huge swath of the watershed district. And I think that's a leverage that you can use somehow in terms of, it seems very, in many ways, a one-way relationship. If we can leverage that to make it a more two-way, and then use those networks, you branch off of that. And I think that could be potentially much faster and broader than any social network we can ever get to. So if we, again, just all the good that comes from Ashley's stewardship, all of the, even all the regulatory things that we do, it's all those touches. Those are the touches that people most.
Yeah, because they're more personal and
They
investment in terms of, their interests, their time, their resources, and be able to share and network with others in that and then broad. I mean, I really agree with that. There's some real opportunities.
We're all about data. We like our data. We've got lots of address data.
We know where they are.
We know where you are.
And our drone will be watching.
Yeah. I don't know if we should go there. Watching.
That won't go over well.
Well, thank you. That's been incredibly helpful, and I'll follow up on some of the items that you provided here. Build them into our next draft. We'll just spilled some.
Oh, computers don't like that.
No, we're not.
Put it down.
I was like, yeah, keep it.
Shut it down.
Well, yeah, keep it that
Yeah,
way.
keep it that way. And turn it off.
You can probably just like set it
No.
TP stars to be public.
And a water,
A-frame style.
water bottle kind of, it was unscrewed, but yeah, kind of drinks my computer and I just had it shut down and let it dry out for a few days.
It'll be a fun email tonight.
Hopefully it'll be.
Okay,
Yes.
administrative report.
Yes, so first couple items are just informational, the upcoming meetings as well. I can't believe that that's close to the end of the year, that list. Couple of staff anniversaries, including
Yeah. Was it
Congratulations.
going forward?
Yeah. Kind of the meat and potatoes of this report includes the attachment from Minnesota Water for the resolutions and petitions meeting. One action item we'll need is to know which managers would be able to attend that meeting. It's a virtual meeting via Zoom on the 31st, which I believe is a Monday. At 10 a.m. Did any of you participate last year in the Zoom resolutions
It was
meeting?
an alternate that I seen. I think Ben, you were.
Were you there too? Yeah. So I do need two managers to be delegates for that meeting. That would be the voting members, and then we can have an alternate too if there's a third that's interested in anybody can attend and listen in, but we do need to designate two delegates for that meeting. You guys can let me know, get first dibs, and then if we don't have two here, then I can check in with Val and Gabby as well. But
Yeah, I'm available. I think there was, I don't know.
okay. So
And I know I am not available.
I'm pretty sure I can be available.
okay,
I would have to check my work schedule though.
okay. Sounds
But
good.
as far as give Gabby and Val the opportunity, who the official delegates are.
Yeah, I can do that. So I can say Ben or Mark and then maybe Ben,
Mhm.
and then see what they say, and I can get that filled out. I don't think she needs it for a week or so yet. So, And then the reason for that meeting is the resolution. So there's a packet of resolutions here for you to consider. If you want to discuss them now or have any questions or comments, I guess, maybe not questions, I'm not necessarily the exact right person, but I can try and answer anything you might have. Otherwise, I think last year what we did is if you had any comments about the specific, you could send them to me and I would pass them on to the delegates who would be voting. But certainly have that discussion here as well. A number of them are from Comfort Lake Forest, or I'm sorry, Carnelian Marine St. Croix, relating to shoreline management. There's some good suggestions for kind of improving some training and education and a few other items related to shoreline restoration. There's just as I'm looking through here, that 2608 is related to the reuse concerns with the plumbing board that we talked about last month. And then the 09 has been before the committee before regarding wake boat impacts on lake systems.
There's actually an adopted resolution on the wake board. It's a little bit refined.
Yeah, I think it's more refined. I can't remember if that one was, I guess I should a little more closely, but I don't remember if that past one was coming off the books.
No, I think it was 2022, so it's pretty on.
yeah.
But I don't remember the exact detail in terms of how they differ. I don't know, I guess just a couple of quick comments. And I don't need to go too deep into it, but the first resolution for the water storage, and trying to get more water storage on other public lands, DNR, and fish and wildlife. I think that's maybe a worthy thought. I'd rather broader. What about DOT properties? Always get a little nervous about the idea of, well, we'll just shunt more of our essentially stormwater that we don't want on our, they would probably egg fields or other, and put them into those wetlands.
I had a hard time with that one. It
Yeah.
seems like we're trying to legislate something that should be relationship building. Like if you can have a good relationship with those people and they have a site that's worthy, great, but I don't know what this does from a legislative standpoint, because it's not going to say DNR shall make all lands available to watershed districts.
I don't think it should be legislated.
I don't think
the relationship.
I think you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, this wasn't a legislative, so it was checked for requires state agency advocacy. So this was working with the DNR essentially to kind of change their policies on that.
Just to speak for the water resources in a sense. Having too much water is not always a good thing. And then just to call out the big Carnelian, when I was still working, I'd seen a couple of webinars by work they were doing. And they had done quite extensive inventory of their shorelines, and they've really kind of explored the level, it comes to realization of the level of complexity. And they present in these resolutions, I think, do a very good job. Like Ison's in drawing, crafting these up. I think it definitely includes some of this. I mean, we're in the same realm. And I think they're very valuable in the way it's laid out. It's my take. And then the whole plumbing board thing. I have whatever in distant past in my career, plumbers seem to have some odd powers or authority.
Yeah, who knew?
So I think that's a good resolution.
Yeah, I did too.
Oh my.
Sounds like maybe just that first one, there was some pause or concern. But that generally you were supportive of the rest of them, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Well, if there's other comments, or things you want to share with me, I can pass that along, like I said, to the, well, I can send it kind of
And do you remember what Jan's deadline is or are for being able to incorporate this? So the deadline is probably a few days before first March, or not March, April, August.
to incorporate changes,
So,
you mean?
yeah,
or
if
what?
there's, if there are any, you know, any language changes or any thoughts and any reactions.
I don't
So
know,
when
I
we
think
need to
it
get-
has to come at the meeting,
Okay, so,
any concerns or comments.
all right. But if we wanted to have kind of a sense from the board where we're at. If we were to send you something
Yeah.
and we send it back out,
Yeah,
I'm trying to get a sense of timing, so I know. What's-
probably, let's say a week before, like the 24th.
Yeah.
The only other question I had was on resolution 2026-02 for supporting dedicated state funding. Aren't watersheds already, like, that's why we have a levy, or is that only Metro that has the levy for programs?
For, yeah, just Metro, yeah.
Okay, that kind of clears it up.
Yeah.
Okay, never
Well,
mind.
if watershed don't, I mean, non-metro watersheds have the authority for levy, but
Well-
WMOs do not.
Yeah, well, it's a different levy limit, sorry, yes, they levy, but they don't have the
The high
same
cap.
limit that we have.
Okay.
So they often don't do projects without other funding sources. But I'm not sure.
Just hard with where we are economically, they just keep creating more budgets at the state level that are then rolled back. I don't know how to respond to that one.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's, if you can show the need, then there can be more discussion around
Mhm.
the work. And so this would be advocating, for more money to this cause, but sometimes even just that advocacy helps
Mhm.
just dedicate or push different funds to different places. Similar with the hazard mitigation fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the hazard mitigation funds that Ellen forgot to say. It does include, but really we want to make sure it includes other local governmental units, not just watershed
Yeah.
districts. Because
Right.
watersheds don't occur in like southeast part of the state or the northeast part of the
Right.
state where they have had substantial flooding. So counties and SWCDs, cities should have access to any of that kind of hazard.
Yeah, right.
Funds. In my.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Project and program status reports. As always, if you have anything you'd like to call out, get clarification on, ask a question, we'll take those now.
My first one's on C. Yeah, just a query as to when we'll have a chance to see the delivery.
That is, well, let's see. That's a good question. We're kind of in the guts of it now. I don't, well, actually, let me check something. Check our longer range schedule to see if we have a target date. I don't know if we've talked about that.
Part of the plan
specifically, or-
too, so I think it's kind of like with this, it'll be an attachment of the plan. Right?
Or it's at least referred to, but there may be a month that we thought about bringing it.
We'll get back to you on that. I
Yeah,
can't
it's a good
remember.
question. We're still kind of.
It should be in the next few months.
Yep.
Or maybe you're.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah, we'll talk about it, but I think you'll need to see it as part of when we release the plan, so that.
Yeah.
So it makes
It's
sense.
all tied
for
together, yeah.
implementation.
That's an unsatisfactory answer, but
Soon.
coming, yes.
I don't have anything for that. It kind of the same vein, our creek walks and, you know, I'm anxiously waiting to see what some of that
Soon, Mark.
prioritization might look like, you know, with some of those data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So is that, you know?
yeah, so it's later this summer, we hope to have that, you know, finalize or draft finals. To staff, and you should see that probably this fall.
Yeah, I mean, there's a draft of that. I've seen the maps and there's a lot of information, so rest assured.
Part of my interest is to make sure that we are adequately considering that in how we're viewing the whole watershed management plan.
Yeah.
I don't know, we talked about it before, but in my world, just in my little head, it seems like we've often thought our lakes and our wetlands, but streams haven't
Yeah.
talked as much
Well,
about.
it's definitely, yeah.
I know we've been working on it for
implementation table,
years.
But you also might have spied a mention of it in our budget too, so we're looking at that. We have budget plan for that first section of creek that we're looking to do some planning.
Yeah, there are a few areas in Battle Creek that rise pretty high, and so Battle Creek's gonna get a lot of attention. But
And
that's the
Fish Creek,
recommendation.
I mean,
And Fish Creek shortly, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Next one is K.
I have 1G. It's kind of a broken record. Restoration planning, I'm glad to see this. And I just suffice to say, I'm anxious to see the result. I don't have to tell me when, but
Yep.
I'm waiting.
For I'm sorry, the wetland.
The wetland, yeah.
And kind of ditto on K, it says will be
Yeah.
distributed this
Friday.
Okay.
I hope to have,
Yeah.
so you'll all receive the implementation table and the narrative for that section on Friday.
Okay.
That's the target, and that will also go to the TAC for their information as well. And then by the third week of August, you will have, the plan is, right? Third week of August, that they'll
I think
have
so, in time
everything.
for the board packet.
No,
Is it?
no, that was supposed to go before, to them, to the board.
Yeah.
So before
Oh, yeah,
The
Review is supposed to be all set up
Yep.
by August 20th.
yep, that's right.
20th, so.
I won't be able to review the whole plan and the packet for September over a weekend.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
No, so
Yeah.
you'll have it on the 20th, and then the meeting's not till the 9th.
Yep.
Of September, so board
Yeah.
packet won't be until that week before that, so you'll have like 2 weeks
But
with it
the-
ahead of time.
But with the implementation plan section ahead of time, so
Yeah, so
that's
we're.
why we wanted to
yeah.
stagger it.
And
It's,
I
yeah,
know it's probably an ask, but I'll just put it out there. Is there some way we can, that implementation is such a wide,
yeah,
I don't know. My little screen,
sure. Well, one thing is we have considered sending it in both PDF and Excel.
Yeah.
So that you
It's been
can
that way
hide things that
until-
are not of
yeah.
interest, or you can sort things.
yeah. The Excel
For that
version does,
reason.
is helpful, and I think you
Yeah.
get, so you can sort and do different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can play around with it. And the way that it appears right now for you is not the way it's necessarily gonna look in the final plan. This is like everything.
Right,
So you can see all the minutia, but we'll be thinking about how to make that more manageable in a PDF form. But yeah, you'll get the Excel spreadsheet too.
I think you'll find too, so you'll have really the meat of this plan this week. You know, like the implementation table and that implementation narrative is the bulk of like
Yeah.
what you'll be most interested in reading.
Yeah.
The rest, there's inventory and like a narrative on soils and groundwater, you know,
Yep,
just like other kind of more inventory things that will round out the rest.
so carve
Yeah.
out reading time.
Yeah.
get a
And-
cup of coffee.
And it details.
Yeah.
And also, so on at the, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but September 9th, we'll ask you to like authorize us to prepare it to be sent out for the
Agency
first,
review.
agency review. But it won't go probably until later in September too, right? So there'll still be a week or two after that meeting to provide
Go to
more.
the agencies or public, or like they want?
Well, it'll be both, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess one other thing I'll mention with respect to the chloride reduction strategy, Stephanie, is that I remember last time we talked about, the last time you saw the implementation plan, one of your comments, which I thought was fair, was that, there was like one line for the chloride reduction strategy that said like implemented. And it seemed a little bit underwhelming given the amount of effort we'll be putting into the chloride reduction strategy. So you'll notice this time, well, you won't see yet the full-blown chloride reduction strategy implementation plan. We're still working on that together. But what you will see is places where there are action items that have to do with communication or stewardship grant funding or whatever, or there's an asterisk that says this also relates to the chloride reduction strategy. So you can see how you can kind of get a preview of how we see that chloride reduction strategy manifesting itself across many different activities in the plan. So see if that lands with you. And then you'll eventually see the whole list of implementation items planned for the chloride reduction.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, getting real. Okay, any other questions?
I didn't have any further.
There's some great work that is going on with the communication and education team. I would appreciate those write-ups and the natural resource team. Thanks, Pat, for hanging out with us. You guys are all doing, and we always hear about the enforcement and inspections. A lot of good work. Just great team we've got.
It was great to see Pat and Paul. We did a walk around in Tamarack Nature Preserve with Dan Shaw and the team showed up. And really appreciate that. And really, I'm looking for kind of along the lines of leveraging the district's expertise on communicating in terms of if we see changes here, not everybody reacts well to change. So, so how do we, how do you tee it up? So I'd like to get some help along those lines as well.
Yeah. We're excited for that project. September.
No nomination, project nomination for the annual meeting. We're about to get ready.
Oh, oh yes. Yep.
Might be fine for that.
Yep.
And
Good
we're
pick
not
up,
alone. I mean, Appalachian was involved. But,
They were involved in the Get Gritty program.
they weren't. I thought they were. Okay. Well, you have all credit.
There were other.
There was other, Rice Creek, Flamo, and Coon Creek.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, good suggestion.
And I do want to call out the bingo team. It was
Sounds like it was a fun night.
That was beyond expectation. I did not
it's really cool.
anticipate that much interest. That was a good surprise.
Yeah, I was using spitball. Yeah.
I saw that in your picture.
Contraptions to cover up my board. So.
I got
Those got really creative. It was fun to see some of those. Appreciate the pictures.
Yeah. Ashley's bingo calling talents were appreciated.
I got a little scolding from Carol. The day after, she said, "Why didn't you tell me about this? Watershed plant bingo thing?" Because our daughter Rachel Shuley, there's another Rachel Shuley, her sister-in-law. They live in Woodbury, and they're kind of like you wouldn't think they would have anything to do, and they were there.
They were there.
So she posted up that Facebook, Carol found out
Oh,
about, and how much fun it was.
no. Wait a second, Ramsey-Washington.
Rachel, she was there that. Great day.
That's funny. Her and your sister-in-law had the same name.
Yeah.
I think we need a motion to adjourn. If there's other comment?
I motion we adjourn. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yes, I second.
All right, we are adjourned for the evening.